Hey everyone, and welcome to this Review Explainer, where we're going to completely unpack the ultimate public health toolkit used to combat disease. We're talking about the 3 levels of prevention. I am so thrilled you're here, because today we're going to look at the exact frameworks health professionals use to save lives on a massive, massive scale. Have you ever actually wondered how public health folks manage to stop an illness before it even begins? Or, well, if they can't stop it, how they intervene before it completely turns a person's life upside down? We spend so much time in our culture talking about how to cure diseases, but honestly, the real magic, that happens in the strategic steps we take to just avoid that hospital visit in the first place. So here is our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the overarching prevention paradigm, and then we'll systematically break down primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention.
All right, let's jump straight into section 1, the prevention paradigm, and talk about this huge shift in disease.
Through what's known as the epidemiologic transition, which is this really fascinating theory developed by Abdel Omran, our national health profile has drastically shifted over time. Basically, we moved away from the age of pestilence and famine, where seasonal infectious outbreaks were the big, scary threat, right into the age of degenerative and man-made diseases. Because of this shift, chronic, long-duration illnesses now account for an absolutely astounding 7 out of every 10 deaths in the U.S. Pathogens are just no longer our primary executioners. Instead, it's chronic biological wear and tear and our lifestyle habits. And this massive shift, it entirely strains our healthcare system. Today, a person might spend decades managing multiple comorbidities, things like hypertension, obesity, arthritis. This means the medical system has to provide continuous, long-term care management rather than just temporary emergency responses. Because of that, a staggering 86% of all healthcare spending in the U.S. is funneled directly into treating people with these chronic conditions. But here is the most interesting part of all of this. A huge chunk of this crushing burden is entirely preventable. It's not just down to genetics or bad luck. Research actually shows that more than half of all mortality could be slashed simply by targeting our habits. Literally, if populations never smoked, moved their bodies regularly, and I know, nobody wants to hear it, actually ate a healthy diet and avoided being overweight, we could prevent an enormous amount of human suffering and economic drain. So, to systematically tackle this burden, public health uses a chronological roadmap. Think of it like a timeline of intervention. We want to intervene before a threat even happens, then right after it starts, but maybe before it's obvious, and finally after it causes damage, to try and restore health. These are the 3 core levels of prevention. Which brings us to section 2, primary prevention, stopping the onset. The classic textbook definition of primary prevention is taking measures to completely forestall the onset of an illness during what we call the pre-pathogenesis period. And that's just a fancy way of saying before the disease process has even begun in the body. The ultimate goal here? Keeping healthy people healthy. The truly crucial point is that this level exclusively targets the healthy population. We are focusing entirely on individuals without any signs or symptoms of the disease in question. Think of yourself right now, when you feel perfectly fine. We basically want to build a fortress around you so the illness literally cannot take root. Some brilliant real-world examples of this include administering vaccines, like the HPV vaccine to prevent cervical cancer, or running mass media anti-smoking campaigns to stop people from ever lighting up that very first cigarette. But it also goes way beyond individual choices. It includes broad environmental changes, like enforcing safe drinking water and sanitation standards, or setting up community exercise programs to proactively reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. Now let's look at how this contrasts with our very next stage. While primary prevention focuses heavily on stopping a disease from happening in the first place, so reducing the incidence of new cases, secondary prevention assumes, okay, the disease has already begun. Its mission is to detect that existing, hidden disease as quickly as humanly possible. And that leads us right into section 3. Secondary prevention, catching it early. Secondary prevention involves measures that lead directly to early diagnosis and prompt treatment. The main objective here is to limit disability, prevent more severe pathogenesis, and essentially just stop the disease dead in its tracks before it can cause major, irreversible damage to the body. Notice how the target population has totally changed here. We are no longer targeting completely healthy, risk-free individuals. We're putting on our detective hats. We are targeting folks who may already have the disease, but they're completely unaware. They're asymptomatic, or they're in the very, very early hidden stages. Classic examples of this: screening programs. Think of mammography diagnostic units checking for early signs of breast cancer, or getting a regular blood pressure screening at a local health fair to catch hidden hypertension. It also includes HIV testing centers and fasting blood sugar tests for diabetes. By catching these conditions early on, medical professionals can start treatment promptly, which drastically changes the patient's long-term outcome.
Let's move on to Section 4, tertiary prevention, restoring health.
But what happens when a disease advances way past the point of early detection? What if the damage is already done? Well, that introduces tertiary prevention. This level focuses heavily on rehabilitation. It is all about returning a person to their maximum usefulness and highest quality of life after a significant illness or injury has already left its mark.
At this stage along our timeline, the intervention specifically targets populations that are already suffering from advanced disease, impairment, or dependency. We aren't trying to prevent the onset anymore, and we aren't trying to catch it early. We're actively managing the aftermath to prevent further deterioration or even death.
Concrete examples of this include putting a patient through a rigorous cardiac rehabilitation program after they've survived a heart attack. It also looks like enrolling a patient with advanced diabetes into a comprehensive chronic disease management program so they can prevent amputations or blindness. It even includes creating patient support groups to help individuals navigate the intense mental and physical toll of long-term illness.
And honestly, this beautifully illustrates how these three levels function together as one comprehensive shield. It's a continuous, overlapping strategy. You're preventing new cases at the primary level, you're minimizing the impact of existing ones at the secondary level, and you're restoring quality of life at the tertiary level. Together, they form the absolute backbone of a successful public health system. So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a final, provocative thought. Take a look around your own neighborhood, your workplace, or your local schools. Are you seeing investments primarily in catching people after they fall? Or are there actually safety nets keeping them upright from the start? How can you apply these three distinct levels of prevention to champion better health and demand smarter policies in your own community? Think about it, and let that perspective shift the way you view health forever. Thanks so much for joining me.